Grace's heart pounded fiercely in her chest as she sat across from Richard in the dimly lit restaurant, the air thick with unspoken tension between them. She wasn't content to be the secret shadow lurking at the edges of his life anymore, no. This affair was no longer just a fleeting pleasure. It was territory she intended to claim, a life she planned to rewrite on her own terms. She had made a choice, a desperate and defiant one, and now she carried within her the undeniable proof. She was pregnant with Richard's child. The secret she had kept locked away was burning to be unleashed, a force that would shift the balance of power between them. As the evening wore on, and they left the restaurant hand in hand, a sudden wave of nausea forced Grace to excuse herself hastily, slipping away to the restroom to throw up. Richard's concern flickered in his eyes as he caught sight of her pale face when she returned, his voice softening with a rare tenderness. "Are you all right?" he asked, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear as they stepped out into the quiet street. "You should really go for a checkup, just to be safe." The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge, and Grace reached slowly into her bag, her fingers trembling as she pulled out a small, sealed envelope. She held it out to Richard, watching the confusion flicker across his face before he took it from her. "What's this?" he asked, voice sharp with disbelief, eyes narrowing as he peeled back the paper to reveal the confirmation inside. For a long moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis as Richard stared at the test results, shock flickering and then hardening into something cold and unreadable. "Pregnant?" he repeated, his voice low and incredulous. "You've been pregnant for 2 weeks and didn't think to tell me?" The weight of betrayal in his words cut through the space between them like a knife. Grace's lips trembled as she tried to explain. "I wanted to surprise you. I thought you would be happy." But Richard's expression darkened, the flicker of any kindness extinguished beneath the glare of harsh reality. "Happy?" he scoffed, the word dripping with disbelief. "Grace, this was nothing but a fling, a mistake, and now you've ruined it by getting pregnant." The cruelty of his words hit her like a blow, her breath catching in her throat. "But you said you loved me," she whispered, eyes searching his face for any hint of the man she had believed in. He chuckled, a bitter, mocking sound that shattered any illusions. "Love? You're nothing more than my maid, Grace. Just the woman who cleans my house, cooks my meals, and satisfies me in secret. That's all you are, Aunt. That's all you'll ever be." He pulled her close then, an ironic gesture of possession rather than affection. "I'm a married man, Grace. I have a wife and a child. You think you can change that?" The sting of rejection seared through her, but Grace wasn't the woman to crumble under such dismissiveness. "What so? You're just using me. I thought this was real for you," she said, desperation thick in her voice as she grasped at the hope she had clung to. Richard shrugged, cold and unrepentant. "Real? This was never about forever. I don't want you, Grace. I want my wife. And you? You'll never replace her." But Grace's fire was just beginning to kindle, her voice steady despite the tumult raging inside her. "We could be a family, you and me and the baby. We could leave everything behind and start fresh somewhere new, far from Amanda and her world. She'll never come back to you, not after what you've done." He scoffed again, stepping back as if to distance himself from the audacity of her words. "I love my wife, Grace. That's the truth you'll have to accept. I can't leave her, no matter what." Then his gaze hardened, almost sneering. "But you're going to get rid of this mistake. I won't have my life upended by your foolishness." Grace's eyes burned with fury, the humiliation and anger twisting into a dangerous resolve. She was no longer the submissive maid content with scraps of affection. She was a woman scorned, a force ready to fight back. "You think I'm weak?" she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous promise. "You think I'll just disappear? You don't know who you're dealing with, Richard. I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. You've used me, betrayed me, but I'm the one who's going to take control now." The room seemed to close in around them, tension crackling like electricity between two people on the edge of a storm. Richard's expression darkened, but something in Grace's fierce gaze made him pause. This was no longer a game to be tossed aside. She had become a wild card, unpredictable and terrifying in her determination. Grace turned away then, the weight of her secret growing heavier but also more powerful. This pregnancy was no longer just a burden, it was her weapon, her claim to a future that would no longer be dictated by Richard's cold indifference. And as she walked into the night, her mind raced with plans not just for survival, but for the reckoning that was sure to come. Richard's sudden silence was a quiet storm. After that explosive confrontation, he stopped returning Grace's calls entirely. Her insistent ringing became a background hum she could no longer bear. Every message she left, every plea, every demand dissolved into a void of indifference. He refused to pick up, as if erasing her from his life would undo the tangled mess they'd created. Grace's frustration simmered beneath her composed exterior, her texts growing desperate, but Richard remained unreachable, cold, distant, and resolute. The man who once sought her with hunger and whispered promises now shut her out without explanation, leaving her clutching at empty echoes and the weight of a life she no longer controlled. Meanwhile, Amanda found herself slowly drifting towards new connections, fragile but vital lifelines in a sea of loneliness. Sarah, a vibrant and warm-hearted woman from her neighborhood, became a steadfast presence offering laughter, empathy, and an unwavering shoulder to lean on. Sarah tried gently to nudge Amanda toward the possibility of love, weaving stories of second chances and quiet hope into their conversations. "You deserve happiness," Sarah would say, her eyes shining with conviction. But Amanda would shake her head softly, the pain still raw beneath her guarded smile. "Not yet," she whispered. "I need time to heal these cracks before I let anyone in again." Her heart was a fragile fortress, the wounds of betrayal still fresh, and the thought of opening up to someone new felt more terrifying than freeing. Yet, the seed of companionship planted by Sarah's kindness gave her a tentative sense of belonging she hadn't felt in months. Among those who quietly cared was Bruce, a gentle soul who had heard whispers of Amanda's heartbreak and struggles. He never pressured her with promises or expectations. Instead, he waited patiently, understanding that healing was not a race but a process. Bruce's warmth extended beyond Amanda He's affection for little Liam was unmistakable, their bond blossoming through simple moments of shared joy. Ice cream dates became a cherished ritual, their laughter ringing softly against the backdrop of Amanda's cautious smiles. "Not too much ice cream, please," Amanda would call from the kitchen window, a protective edge in her voice that spoke volumes of her concern for Liam's well-being. Though a tentative happiness had begun to glow within her, flickering like a candle in a dark room, a part of Amanda remained fractured and ache, hidden beneath smiles, a quiet sorrow that whispered she was not yet whole. One day, unable to endure the crushing pain and relentless rejection from Richard any longer, Grace made a desperate decision that would shake their lives to the core. She published a raw, tear-filled video exposing Richard's cruelty, how he had abandoned his wife Amanda, simply because she gained weight, cast aside their son, then dragged Grace, just a maid, into his life only to discard her once again. In the video, Grace tearfully apologized to Amanda, admitting how she had fallen for Richard's charm, how she never meant to ruin their home, and how now, pregnant and forgotten, she was left to face the consequences alone. The video went viral, sparking outrage and division. Many viewers rallied behind Grace, praising her courage to speak out against a man who disrespected and discarded women without remorse. But just as many condemned her, arguing she was a manipulative interloper who destroyed a family from within. Heated debates erupted across social media, with voices arguing over who was truly to blame. Meanwhile, Richard's world began to crumble. Business partners withdrew their deals, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. The first blow came swiftly a terse phone call from a major Chinese company abruptly ending a lucrative contract. Richard's pleas fell on deaf ears, and when his secretary handed him a phone streaming Grace's video on repeat, his eyes widened in disbelief and panic as his carefully built empire began to fracture. Frantically, Richard reached out to Grace, his voice thick with desperation as he begged her to take down the video, insisting they needed to talk. He offered bribes, tried to silence her with promises, but Grace stood firm, refusing to be bought or intimidated. Their calls quickly devolved into bitter insults and threats, a reflection of his crumbling pride. Within a month, his company's collapse accelerated, leaving him isolated and desperate. Turning his gaze to Amanda, Richard obsessively tracked her movements, showing up uninvited at her door and begging for forgiveness, but Amanda, cautious and hurt, refused to engage. Richard's consumed by jealousy and a need to reclaim control. One night, that fury exploded when he saw her out on a quiet date with Bruce. Without warning, Richard stormed into the restaurant, eyes wild and burning with rage. Amanda froze, shocked to see him, his gaunt, desperate face far from the powerful man he once was. Steeling herself, she introduced Bruce firmly as her fiancé. Richard sneered venomously. "What? Just jump into another man's arms when you're still married, you whore?" The word hit like a punch. Bruce's calm shattered. Rising swiftly, he delivered a powerful blow, his voice steady. "Never call my woman that." Richard staggered back, clutching his jaw, humiliated in front of everyone. The woman he had body-shamed, abandoned, and broken was no longer the frightened wife he left behind. The sight of Bruce holding what he claimed was his unleashed, a desperation that made him reckless. He continued stalking Amanda, trying to invade her space, unable to bear losing what he thought was his. Broken and alone, he called Amanda's parents, confessing his mistakes and vowing to make amends, even recording a tearful apology video that streamed with regret. After much reflection and hesitation, Amanda took a bold step she accepted, to see Richard, perhaps seeking closure or a fragile path toward healing. The public remained divided. The comments beneath Richard's apology video a battlefield of fierce opinions, some urging forgiveness, others demanding justice for Amanda, and many still debating Grace's role with fervour. Bruce, protective and wary of Richard's volatile nature, offered to accompany Amanda, fearing the worst. But Amanda, quietly growing in strength and resolve, assured him she would be fine, determined to confront the past and the man who had shattered her life on her own terms. The evening loomed heavy with unspoken pain, fragile hope, and the uneasy possibility of reconciliation, every moment charged with the weight of years lost and futures yet unwritten. Amanda agreed to meet him inside the very house where he had maltreated her, abandoned her when she was vulnerable, fattened by pregnancy, and left to carry their child alone. That night, Richard prepared dinner, placed flowers on the table, and set a fragile scene of welcome. But Amanda refused to sit. He stepped closer, voice soft and manipulative. "You're my wife!" He reached out, attempting to touch her face, to kiss her, but she pushed him away fiercely. "You lost that right the moment you started frolicking with Grace, when you no longer see me as worthy." Her words cut deeper than any slap. The truth she'd carried for years laid bare. Richard's eyes flickered with regret, but Amanda's resolve was steel. He sank to his knees, voice trembling, confessing. "Amanda, I was wrong. I was blinded by fear and foolishness. I never meant to hurt you. I was scared of the changes. Your pregnancy, your weight. I didn't know how to be the man you needed. I'm sorry." But Amanda's gaze was unforgiving. "You left me broken and alone, body-shamed me for growing in a way that brought life. You chose to betray me instead of stand by me. Your apologies won't undo the nights I cried alone, the humiliation I endured. You don't get to rewrite our story." With trembling hands, Amanda reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. She placed it firmly on the table before Richard, her eyes never leaving his. "These are the divorce papers," she said, her voice steady but filled with finality. "I forgive you, Richard, but I cannot return to my vomit. I will never go back to the man who abandoned me when I was vulnerable and body-shamed me after carrying his child." "This is where our story ends." Richard's face twisted in shock, disbelief flashing across his features as he stared at the papers.
"Sign them,"
Amanda continued, her tone unwavering. "It's the only way forward." His pleas tumbled out in desperation, begging for another chance, for forgiveness, but Amanda's resolve held firm. "Your apologies cannot erase the nights I suffered alone. You chose betrayal. I choose to live free from your shadow." Days later, in the quiet of his mother's sitting room, Richard's brother leaned in with a cold glint in his eyes, whispering a plan that stoked the fire of desperation within him. "If she won't take you back, then she can't take the child from you," he said, outlining the grim battle that awaited in court. The custody fight was fierce, with both sides digging deep, but in the end, Amanda's unwavering love and commitment to Liam shone through, earning her full custody. Throughout every trial and sleepless night, Bruce stood steadfastly by Amanda's side, offering quiet encouragement, shielding her from despair, and ensuring their small family remained intact. Bruce's heart longed for more than friendship, but he understood the fragile place Amanda was in. She wasn't ready. So he showed his love in the ways he could, through thoughtful gifts, tender support, and the patient constancy that slowly mended what had been broken. One evening, as rain began to patter softly against the windows, Bruce stopped by just before the storm fully broke. After putting Liam to bed, the two of them settled on the couch, the warm glow of the television casting gentle shadows across their faces. Their conversation meandered, light and easy at first, touching on hopes and memories, fears and dreams. Then, their eyes met lingering longer than before, and a silent current sparked between them. Slowly, almost hesitantly, they leaned in, lips meeting with a desperate hunger, as if they had both been starving for connection, for warmth, for something to hold on to in the cold aftermath of pain. The kiss deepened, passion rising, a dance of rediscovery and longing. Suddenly, a tiny, cracking voice interrupted them, breaking the fragile spell. "Uncle Bruce, do you like my mummy?" Liam's words, innocent yet full of curiosity, floated between them. Embarrassed, both Amanda and Bruce turned their faces away, cheeks flushed with shy smiles. Amanda whispered softly, "I thought you were sleeping." Liam, undeterred, slipped quietly between them, his small hands resting on Bruce's knees as he looked up with bright, hopeful eyes. "Please, can you be my daddy?" The room fell silent, except for the rain outside, the weight of those simple words settling over them like a promise of new promise. True strength is not measured by the love you receive, but by the courage you summon to reclaim your life when that love is betrayed. Amanda's journey reveals that even when those closest to you, those you trust and love, turn away, manipulate, or abandon you, your worth remains intact. Betrayal may shatter your world, but it cannot define your spirit. The real power lies in rising from the ashes of heartbreak, rejecting bitterness and revenge, and choosing to rebuild yourself on your own terms, with dignity, resilience, and self-respect. This lesson reminds us that while others may try to diminish us or control our narrative, the ultimate victory is in reclaiming your story, embracing your strength, and nurturing hope for a better future, no matter how dark the present may seem. 2 years later, after weathering storms and healing wounds, Bruce found the courage to kneel before Amanda, holding out a simple ring that sparkled with hope. Amanda's heart fluttered, but beneath the joy was a flicker of fear, the fear of being hurt again, of opening her heart only to have it shattered. She looked into Bruce's eyes and whispered her worries, the pain of the past still lingering like a shadow. With gentle strength, Bruce took her hands in his and vowed softly, "I know your heart has been broken, Amanda, but I promise you, I will be different.